And this is really important. This is what I learned later. I thought graphic design was a skill, but actually graphic design is the foundation for so many more skills you can learn. So to be a good illustrator, you need to have graphic design principles. So for me, I specialize in animation. I wouldn't be able to animate a thing if I didn't know graphic design myself, because I have to build the graphics that will animate, right? It's more complex, but a good graphic designer will be a good illustrator and a good web designer and a good thing, because it's dependent on these design principles. The reason why I kind of made these 4 blocks is that in case someone is here thinking, I want to go into the graphic design field, I want to be a professional graphic designer, then there are some things to keep in mind and some knowledge to have. I would break that down into 4 main parts. One is the core knowledge, which starts with graphic design principles. So graphic design is expressed through a set of principles, and that's great because you don't have to come in and say, okay, now what am I going to do? You already have a tool set that you can pick and choose from, combine, and start creating something. And we're going to go through those principles as well. And we're also going to apply that one of those principles today in our collage, so we can understand really what that concept really is, not just a vague idea. But that's one of the main things. And I would also argue that graphic design principles aren't just principles to create graphic design. I think graphic design principles are all around us as we live. It's in how we talk, it's in how we behave with each other, it's in how we communicate. Because graphic design is a part of the overall discipline of design. And design is a way of thinking. It's always present. But once we observe and become conscious of it, you're going to be like, oh, there it is, and there it is. It's in film, it's in websites, it's in newspapers, it's in visuals, everywhere. You'll see it once you know it. So
it's the part of the culture of
absolutely.
The society.
Absolutely, because our society is, and also now it's become more and more visual. Everything is becoming more and more visual with the internet and so on. But actually graphic design became big when printing started, right? When the printing press came into being and we could get visuals printed. That was traditional, which is where collage and things, that's where it started, with cutting things and putting things together. But later, as digital mediums came into being, and that's where the tools come in, is that software started coming in, right? And now you can use computer software and tools to build things digitally. So now graphic design is also on screens. So apart from graphic design principles, of course, it's important to know a little bit about how color works. So color is about, not more about, okay, what are the colors, but more about how certain colors evoke certain emotions in people. There's a reason why the stop sign is in red and the green sign is to go. And so all these kind of colors evoke emotions in us, but if we can combine colors to create mood as well. So if you want to create a visual that shows anger, there's a certain color you would choose. That's just a small example of what that would be. Typography is more about text, right? How text works, how different kinds of text also evoke different kinds of emotions in us. And that's another whole study in itself, which we won't go into in detail, but just to keep in mind that those are a part of the discipline. And then of course composition that Amanda was talking about. Composition is something that we can't really avoid. We are going to do that today. It's how we arrange things visually. Composition is a study in itself, right? Why do we place certain things on a screen or a page? How do I contrast that with another element to make it tell a story, and so on. Research and reference is obviously a big thing. More visuals you see, the more designs you see, the more inspiration you get, the more ideas you have. So that's a big part as well. And of course, like I said, to have the conceptual part and the visual part. Going through the application, so graphic design can be applied in various fields. Of course, in print media like books, magazines, posters, flyers, and cover art for music, but there are many more there as well. Digital media like visual design, web design like Goki is doing, app design, product design, digital product design. So even the softwares and the apps like Instagram or Meta, all these are designed visually using principles. Digital product design has a little bit more to it than graphic design. But, and this is really important, this is what I learned later. I thought graphic design was a skill, but actually graphic design is the foundation for so many more skills you can learn. So to be a good illustrator, you need to have graphic design principles. So for me, I specialize in animation. I wouldn't be able to animate a thing if I didn't know graphic design myself, because I have to build the graphics that will animate, right? It's more complex, but a good graphic designer will be a good illustrator and a good web designer and a good thing, because it's dependent on these design principles. Of course, social media, this is a huge area right now for graphic designers, lots of jobs, content creation. There are influencers who are having graphic designers just to work with them, and there are businesses and companies who are getting graphic designers just to create posts and videos and so on. So there's a lot of potential and excitement in the field at the moment. Education, of course, I'm working in the educational field where you can also build educational materials, textbooks, e-learning platforms. That's something where I'm working in, and apps and so on, and of course in entertainment, film and television, video games and so on. There are things that are not listed here, you can look it up yourself as well. And the main tools, I would say, of course, traditional paper, pencil is a great way to start, but there are digital tools that are also a big part of the job. I feel like if I were to turn back time, I would like to spend more time doing these things first before I go into the tools, because now what's happening is you can get a tool easily, you can learn a skill easily and to make something easily, and then people later struggle because they don't have the design principles under their belt properly. But after a certain point, if you want to get a job, it's important to learn some of these softwares, and my goal is to provide courses in that as well and skills in that, but we'll talk about that later. Adobe, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, there are some free softwares called Krita, Canva that you can just use right now, and of course Figma that Goki has mentioned is also a graphic design software. It's becoming a lot more in graphic design now, but it's mainly being used for web design and digital product design. It has a lot of similarities with other softwares as well, right? If you know Photoshop, you won't take time to learn Figma. And of course, tools like a pen tablet and things like that are also involved in going into a professional field with graphic design. And finally, there are some things if you want to build a career, you need to know, which is how do I present myself to clients? How do I tell people I'm open for a job, which is a part of portfolio building. So that's the best part about this field. You don't really have to be a bachelor's graduate or a master's graduate to get a good job. You kind of need to just have a good body of work. I've seen people who've dropped out of school and become very successful in graphic design because they spent a lot of time building and creating and mastering the principles. So that way, it's a really good field for anyone to go in. You just need to have the passion and willingness to learn. And of course, as a graphic designer, I can work as a freelancer, I can work inside a company, I can work in a studio. There are many ways of working as a designer as well. And also you can make your own business. Once you have the tools to create compelling visuals, I can make my own content, I can make my own logo, I can make my own company, and many people are doing that as well. So it's a great skill to know, and a bunch of roles that graphic designers go into. But again, like I said, I'll be giving you guys this later to go through in good time.